It's being hailed as a new gold rush. Billions of dollars are being spent on renewable energy in Victoria, where hundreds of wind turbines are emerging across farming districts. Well, it means money in the bank for some farmers and businesses. Not everyone wants their landscape to change. And there's concern the state's ageing electricity network will buckle under the surge of the new energy load. Ballarat reporter Charlotte King has more.
A transformation is taking place across sleepy towns in Western Victoria. The first signs of a multi-billion-dollar boom are being felt here in Skipton, west of Ballarat.
Whether it's the overhead power line people, whether it's the wind farm people, we're that one-stop place where they come in and they grab their lunch. And yes, I've been able to employ 7 people and build a great business.
The money that's rolling in is coming from a new wave of wind farms.
We've got $3 billion worth of projects currently underway. So we are really experiencing, a gold rush of new energy production across the Grampians region.
Stuart Benjamin works for the Victorian Government's New Energy Task Force in the Grampians. It's his job to ensure the boom goes smoothly.
The job of the task force is to try and accelerate the take-up of those projects.
The Victorian Government's committed to having half the state's energy supply come from renewable sources by 2030.
And this is all about Victorians, communities taking the power back in their hands, because that's where it should be, and our government will facilitate that.
The state government expects to comfortably meet that target, by the most part through harnessing the wind. By 2025, 19 new wind farms will be operating across the state. They'll generate thousands of megawatts of new electricity, more than 2 coal-fired power stations.
Western Victoria is a really key part of that. We're going to have a significant amount more wind farms in 15 years. We're going to have 4 times the amount of wind farms that we've got now. So that impact in a landscape in a visual sense is going to be absolutely huge.
The explosion in new energy has caught some landholders off guard.
Hi, my name's Michelle and I just live on the border of Mortlake. So I'm going to be affected from the north, from the south.
Hundreds in the community of Mortlake have voted against any more wind farms planned for the town. One is already operating, 2 more have been approved and another is being considered by the planning department.
Surely tonight's meeting is a fairly good indication of what we feel.
You would think so?
I would have thought so. Unanimous.
Mortlake is between Warrnambool and Ballarat in Victoria's southwest. It's surrounded by basalt plains and low peaks of dormant and extinct volcanoes. James Knight breeds cattle just south of the town.
We made a choice to move down here and move out of Melbourne, and it is a beautiful place, and I can't help but feel in some respects these projects are really being pushed upon us and are changing the landscape, both from a visual and noise point of view.
Construction has just begun on the Mortlake South Wind Farm, southeast of his property.
The project envelope is out to our east. We'll have 35 turbines from the southeast to the northeast. The testing tower you can see in the distance, and we're approximately in this paddock 600 metres from the nearest turbine.
He's concerned the project will lower the value of his own land.
We run a reasonably large business, and as young people getting into agriculture, there is a requirement to take on some debt. I think it's healthy in some respects, like if we're going to grow the business, that we use that to get there. But from an aesthetics point of view, there is no doubt that it will have some impact on land value, to my mind.
The Victorian Government's agreed to buy the energy from the wind farm, and it's expected to power up to 80,000 homes. To sweeten locals, the wind farm company, Acciona, has offered neighbouring properties thousands of dollars worth of local gift cards. and it's already given more than $100,000 to local groups and events.
I don't know whether the town really wants them, no matter how sweet the deal was, to be honest. And I don't want to speak for anyone else. And thinking out loud, the proposed density of these projects around Mortlake and surrounding areas, I don't know, the deal would have to be pretty sweet, I think, for people to accept it.
To the south of Mortlake, we have the Mortlake South Wind Farm. To the north, we have the Salt Creek Wind Farm at Warrendoo. To the northeast, we have the Dundonnell Wind Farm.
Ian Smith is a local councillor at the Moyne Shire. It wants the state government to stop further development. That includes the latest 400 megawatt wind project, which is awaiting approval.
And the one that tipped the scales of the community angst was over the proposal to build the Mount Fyans Wind Farm, which comes into the north of Mortlake in an arc over the top of Mortlake. The general feeling is that people are acceptable to renewable energy, but there's just far too much coming into our area.
Up the road, the community of Warborough is no stranger to the debate. David Clark has comfortably farmed these hilly grasslands for decades. For almost 10 of those years, he's lived alongside the Warborough Wind Farm.
This has been a really interesting project because it is the first of the really big projects in Victoria, and I think probably in Australia in that context. The anti-sentiment really generated itself around effectively post-construction and generated in a number of individual people who said they were having issues, and that was quite fair enough in that context of things. But then I think it also got quite a lease of life from people who also could look into the future and say, well, there's a wind farm coming towards us and we have a variety of reasons for which we don't want a wind farm. And they joined that cause.
David Clark says farming and wind energy can happily coexist.
For me, this is a really good bit of dirt here. This is volcanic country. It's the last of the volcanic country west of Ballarat. We can grow potatoes here, we can grow pyrethrum, and we've got irrigation. You know, one of the best things this wind farm's done for this district is actually secure it for farming for the future. And I reckon that's a great thing.
Rural landholders get paid thousands of dollars a year to host wind turbines on their property. Developers generally offer an annual community fund as well, but individuals living beside a wind farm don't, as a matter of course, get compensated. David Clark, who's also a councillor for the Pyrenees Shire, says future projects should rethink that arrangement.
What my neighbours see here have a turbine versus what I see really isn't any different. And I've long held the view that, you know, a wind farm that actually makes some payments beyond the immediate wind farm is a significant benefit. Here at the moment, effectively the funds flow about 90% to the landholders and then 10% to the community through the community fund. And I always think a 70-20-10 model is actually probably a much more sustainable model and a much better model in terms of winning over the community.
It's not just the wind that's attracting developers here. The region also provides easy access to the state's electricity network, which is needed to send the power back to the grid. And that's why Mortlake is bringing investors in droves. But there's a limit to how much the existing power lines can transmit.
That's one of the real coming challenges for a government particularly, and it might not be government that invests, it might be private industry. But really we're getting to the stage, certainly on this Horsham line here in Pyrenees Shire and Ararat Shire, that we've just about filled the line up with renewable energy. And it was never designed to do that. It was always designed to push it from Gippsland all the way across the rest of the state. It wasn't designed to have these intermittent sources plugged into it. So both the line needs some change and we're going to need more lines if we're going to put in more renewables.
Australia's energy landscape is changing fast. As coal-fired power stations reach the end of their lives, large-scale renewables are gearing up to take their place. But it's unclear where the investment is going to come from to build the infrastructure that's needed for this transition.
The Australian Energy Market Operator is responsible for planning changes to the national network. It says billions of dollars are needed to improve the country's energy infrastructure as new power sources come online. Without investment, the risk of failures like blackouts will increase.
It actually really affects our day. in the end of it, with all the power going out, just lose a bunch of money. So we still have another 4 or 5 hours of trading, which we could have been doing.
Last month, power was cut to hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses across Victoria. There wasn't enough energy to run the state on a day of record heat, and authorities were forced to load shed in rolling stoppages to stop the entire system from failing. The blackouts were blamed in part on infrastructure failures in the state's coal and gas plants.
While units were falling over in our coal-fired power stations, renewable energy was going strong.
The Victorian government's pinning its hopes for the future on renewables and the roughly 5,000 megawatts of wind and solar energy in the pipeline in Victoria's west. But as it stands, the transmission network won't be able to handle that amount.
The problem is that the current electricity lines in some parts of, say, regional Victoria can't accept high volumes of electrical flow. So without becoming overheated, and then there'll be a technical need to basically constrain or cut off the input of the electricity into the system.
Researchers at the Energy Change Institute at the Australian National University in Canberra are watching the transition with interest.
It's really a bit like building a high-tech, modern greenhouse for agricultural production and then attempting to get the produce to market down a one-lane bush track which frequently becomes flooded.
The energy market operator says upgrades to Western Victoria's electricity network are now a national priority. It's called for private investors to come forward to build around $370 million worth of transmission infrastructure. The money will be paid back over decades through electricity bills.
It gives us the capacity to not only control voltage across the network, but also to inject a large number of new projects all the way from Moorabool right up into Ararat, and Stawell and into Horsham and even further north.
This battery facility near Ballarat has just been built to help cater for the new energy reality.
Essentially, this has the ability to stabilise the grid. This battery, if it's running at full tilt, can run a town of 100,000 for well over an hour. It's unlikely to do that. It's designed to flatten out the grid and to provide stability right across the network.
Stuart Benjamin says the energy mix is changing so quickly, authorities are playing catch-up.
It sometimes feels like we're making this up as we go, and that's the nature of any growth industry. You know, I compare this to the gold rush, where we were literally learning as we built things and we made mistakes. One of the interesting things that we're seeing with the national regulator is even reports that they released 6 months ago, they're having to revise because of the fast take-up of renewable energy.
Local government wants there to be more oversight. Smaller transmission lines that connect wind farms to the wider network aren't currently covered by planning laws. Ian Smith says that needs to change.
We really need the state government to step back, have a look where the transmission lines are going.
The Victorian government has agreed to amend the planning regime so that future power lines are covered. But those controls won't affect projects that are already in the works. David Clark says he supports localised power generation.
Rather than you generate it all on the other side of the state in the Latrobe Valley and then ship it all around the country.
But he says neighbours and communities need to be brought along for the ride.
I think it's time that the council should show that we've got the numbers here. The council should show that they're behind us.
It's a significant landscape change in that sense, and it's here for a long time. And yeah, the best way to take people along with them is actually make them part of the solution.
In the meantime, Skipton's Kim Haley is making the most of her thriving business.
I think when you look at the big picture and you look at a wind turbine and then you look at your coal mines down Melbourne Way, it's far better to see a wind turbine than what it is to see the coal smoke.
And that's Landline for today. From everyone